Hey, everyone just joining. We're going to give a few minutes before we get started here to let people trickle in. But I am particularly excited about this.
Daddy, Daddy.
Hey, bud, come here. Sorry about that. I'm on parent duty.
No problem
So
at
don't
all.
judge. They're on the iPads. We'll give a few more minutes. Emery, do you want to say hi?
Hi.
Yes. Say hi. Emery.
Hi.
Hi.
I think you met my other son when the last time we
I
were chatting just one-on-one a
I
little while
did,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Well, be respectful of everyone's time. Why don't we go ahead and get started as more people come in? So I'm really excited to have Suresh Pushpananthan here with us. Suresh is a neurosurgeon who splits his time between the UK and US. We came to know each other really through just like an online community and really kind of hit it off just based on our similar surgical backgrounds. And then Suresh is also a med tech founder, entrepreneur, who is the founder of Consentapatient, which is a really cool product that I'm working to help integrate into my surgical practice and medical center. So I wanted to invite Suresh on and have him talk about his process of founding Consentapatient and what it is, and kind of go through the product with us, and then we'll have some time for Q&A to talk about Consentapatient specifically, as well as just the entrepreneurial journey. So Suresh, thanks so much for being here with us, and I'll let you take it away.
That's great. Thank you very much, Jordan, and thank you everyone for joining this evening. Let me just share my screen and then I can walk you through what I got planned. Screen to share. Hopefully my screen will come up for you. And
Looks good.
great. Apologies, my computer made me do an update on Windows just before I came on, and now everything's going a little bit slow at my end. But uh, let's see why this is going across my two screens. Sorry. Here we go. I think I'm back in action. Hopefully you can see my screen. Oh, okay.
There we
So
go.
good. So as Jordan said, I'm Suresh Pushpananthan. I'm the clinical director of Bloomsbury Health, but I'm also a neurosurgeon. I'm based both in New York and in London. The company itself is based here in New York City, but I'm also a part-time neurosurgeon at the Royal London Hospital in London. Um, you may have noticed my British accent so far, and you'll hear a lot more of it over the next half an hour, and that's my explanation for why. So over the next sort of 20 or 30 minutes, what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about myself, the company, why I ended up creating it. I'm going to discuss the medical legal landscape, especially with respect to consent. Um, and then I'll explain why Consentapatient is so different to anything else. And I'll give you a demonstration of the platform, and show you hopefully why I believe all of us physicians should certainly be using it. And then we'll have some time for some questions. So hopefully that's okay. Why don't we? So let me start off just telling you a little bit about the company. We're a digital health company that provides clinical governance and clinical risk management solutions. Sounds very boring, and to some extent it is. The company was founded about 10 years ago. So personally, yeah, as a neurosurgeon, we're particularly exposed to clinical risk and litigation. I mean, Jordan, as a plastic surgeon, will also kind of feel some of that pain. And there are certain physicians that are at the very sharp end of the malpractice pandemic. You know, cosmetic surgeons, plastic surgeons generally, spinal surgeons, neurosurgeons, orthopedic surgeons. And, you know, malpractice and consent and the way that it can potentially solve a big chunk of that malpractice problem is something that's generic to all physicians, but there are certain ones that feel it a bit more, and I certainly felt it throughout my residency, and even as an attending. I learned to deal with the high risk that sometimes I successfully managed to negotiate and avoid, but despite best intent, there were some malpractice suits that came my way. And I thought, you know, there's got to be a better way to mitigate that risk without having to spend huge amounts of time and effort typing every conversation I have with a patient into their chart. And so I formed a company with a more tech-savvy and smarter ex-physician colleague called Alex, and that's how we got to where we are today. So we now have a range of applications covering the whole treatment pathway from referral to the follow-up. We started off with Refer a Patient. It's a solution that manages communication and documentation for regional specialist services. It started off with just accepting acute referrals in a hub-spoke system for neurosurgery. And since then, it's spread to quite a few of the neurosurgery centres across the United Kingdom when we first started it. And they all had the same issues with communication errors, malpractice issues. And so Refer a Patient has now kind of come to be shown to reduce clinical risk and reduce malpractice claims. And subsequently, it's come to be used by nearly every hospital in the United Kingdom. And since then, it's even progressed to over 25 specialties and subspecialties in 7 countries. We then moved our head office to New York City a few years ago, and really kind of committed to our second solution, which I'm going to talk to you in a bit more detail today, which is Consentapatient. And that's primarily to tackle the huge burden of malpractice that exists in this country. So that's a little bit about sort of how I got to where we are now and how it is that you've got this British guy talking to you about Consentapatient. So let me tell you a little bit more about the actual product, and then hopefully later on, any of the questions about sort of entrepreneurship and the origin of things, I'm happy to talk about that as well. So this is the platform I wanted to talk about in particular today because it has the potential to be useful to every physician, regardless of whether you're in a large teaching hospital like some of our products, or if you're just a single physician in private practice. This is something that is generic. All physicians need to do this better, and we've designed this solution for every physician. So what are the problems we're trying to solve with this platform? So everyone knows that malpractice is a huge burden on the health system. The cost is growing year on year for physicians, hospitals, and for patients. This growing malpractice problem is, despite consent forms getting longer and more detailed, some centres have got 200-page consent forms nowadays. They're trying to add more and more clauses and detail. It doesn't make a difference. The malpractice problem continues to rise year on year. Even digitizing consent forms and putting them in the electronic medical record systems hasn't impacted this upward trend. And that's because having a consent form is no longer a defense when the process of consent, that is what happens before, during, and after signing consent form, is increasingly the legal vulnerability. The AMA, the American Medical Association, has issued guidance to help physicians in obtaining consent in a compliant way and to help close some of these legal loopholes. Signing a consent form is only one component of many. To do it properly takes a lot of time for a busy physician, upwards of 30 minutes per patient. And even in the best health systems, with legal departments constantly monitoring and chasing physicians to do it properly, it's still only achieved less than 10% of the time. Sorry, my PowerPoint keeps freezing every now and again. So in short, you can either continue to pay more for malpractice costs or invest more time to mitigate against it. Either way, it's expensive and the costs are continuing to rise. So with this in mind, we at Bloomsbury Health thought there's got to be a better way to do this. So we formed a group of patients involved in malpractice claims and negative clinical incidents, and we asked them what would have prevented them from initiating a lawsuit and what they liked and disliked about the consent process that they experienced. Their number one issue was they hated long forms. They weren't happy with the information and education they were given before being asked to give their consent. And thirdly, they were unhappy that the consent form and entire consent process felt like it was purely for the benefit of the hospital or the physician and had little or no benefit for them as patients. We then formed a group of lawyers, malpractice insurers, and medical legal experts, and we asked them to bring all the cases where they had settled or lost a malpractice claim with a greater than 7-figure payout, despite having a paper or digital consent form. And as a group, they analysed all these cases and listed the most common loopholes and vulnerabilities. These lawyers then designed the ultimate document that they wished they had had to protect against all of these cases. They designed what they called their dream document that they wished they had to defend every one of their clients. It's not just a consent form, as I'm going to show you, but it's a detailed consent portfolio which protects their clients against all the common loopholes where consent routinely fails, despite having a seemingly robust signed paper or digital consent form. We then took all these requirements and feedback from the lawyers and patients, and we reverse engineered an entire digital consent management platform, not just a consent form. And we passed this through our physician and patient groups to streamline and engineer it further to ensure it was far quicker and easier for a busy physician to use than even their current poor consent practice. We made sure that patients not only tolerated, but actually enjoyed the process of pre-treatment education and consent. And as a result, we now have a platform that patients love, that lawyers consider more robust, that malpractice insurers believe will cut claims. Yet a standard consent form, as I'm about to show you, can be completed in less than 30 seconds, even for a busy physician, or you can get your staff to do it as well. So you can actually save time while consenting a patient properly. So let me show you the platform now, and you can see for yourself. Let's get rid of the PowerPoint because it keeps choking up my system. Hopefully you can still see my screen. And this is the platform. I'm just going to jump straight in. So don't worry, these aren't real patients. These are a bunch of cartoon characters on my screen. But this is what the platform looks like. I won't talk you through all the details yet. I'm just going to show you the real basics of how to consent a patient and then what a patient is going to see as well. And then maybe if we have time, I'll show you some of the extra features on here. So I'm just going to go to this button at the top here to consent a new patient. And then I'm going to add in another cartoon character. Why don't I add in, unless someone can shout one out, Bugs Bunny. I'll do that. Let's go with Bugs Bunny. And this can be pulled from your hospital's electronic medical record system, Epic, Cerner, whatever you got. I'll put in this date of birth so that I remember it when I pretend to be the patient. So all these demographics can be pre-filled by your EMR, or if you're in a small private practice, this can be manually put in. And then they need to put in their contact details. I'm going to put in this, actually, it's email address so I can show you when I pretend to be the patient, and then their cell number as well. I'm going to bypass that with just some zeros for now. And we've got over 2,500 procedure templates in here, but I've kind of cut down for the purpose of the demo a cosmetic surgery one just so that I can show you. Happy to show you any other ones you want afterwards. Let's spell this correctly. This is the only bit where we actually need to do any typing. So I'm just going to do a rhinoplasty. I know Jordan doesn't do cosmetic facial surgery, but it's the one that I picked when I was trying to cut them down. I wanted something quite short for the demo. Then you choose what kind of anesthesia you want to give for this patient. I'm going to pick general for this one, and it'll bundle in anesthesia consent as well. And if you want, we can add extra information. You can add things, for example, about COVID. You can do what we call a quick personalization. If you've got an extra 30 seconds to a minute, you can type in something in detail. You can actually alter all the components of the consent. But if you've just got a few seconds, you might want to put in something like risk of let's call it infection is higher due to diabetes, something like that. It's what we call a quick personalization that you can put in if you've just got a few seconds. And then you would have your own library as an individual physician. So I've got a whole load of random ones in here, and we said we were going to do a rhinoplasty. And I've got an abridged one here, just not the full ones, just for the sake of demo. So it actually can take an extra 5 minutes, which I don't think we have if I go through every single risk in detail. And then for most patients, you're going to hit this button. If you've got an adult without capacity or a child, or you just want to send them a multimedia information package, that's these options. But if you're ready to consent your patient, it's this one here. And that's it. So it really should be 20 to 30 seconds when you get used to it. Far quicker than writing out a paper consent for those that are on there, and actually quicker than going into something like Epic or Cerner and then doing a consent form via that as well. So now on my waiting list at the top here, you can see I've got Bugs Bunny, waiting for a rhinoplasty. The consent status, hopefully my mouse is coming out. Sometimes it doesn't. If it isn't, can you see my mouse circling? You probably can't. Good. Otherwise, I'll have to find a different way of showing you where I am. So the consent status is pending, so that all of my team, my staff, everyone knows that I've sent this off to Bugs Bunny, but Bugs hasn't done anything with it yet. Because this is something that's there for the whole team to use. Everyone can dip in and out to get this done. It isn't just down to one person. So that's the first bit. That's 30 seconds done. I'm just going to go and be the patient now. I'm going to be Bugs Bunny. So let me just go into my Gmail. Here we go. So they're going to get an email from Record My Health. That's the patient platform. It's going to have some details about your hospital or health facility, who the treating physician is and what you're proposing, some instructions here, and then a big blue button to get started for the patient. So they click on that, and then it'll open up the patient platform. And for security reasons, they just need to enter their date of birth in case you've got the wrong email address is on the patient administration system, etc. Just to make sure it's going through. Then a data policy. And then a video pops up explaining how to use the platform. I won't play much of this because I'm going to show it to you.
That's the confidential area.
I'll just skip that.
Then read.
I'm going to show you the actual platform now. But the point is, you don't have to explain to your patient what they need to do. The video will talk them through the platform, talk them through some of the options to them. So that in your busy office appointment, you can still say, go home, check your email. All the instructions will be there. So this is the patient platform. It's what we call a high contrast conversational style interface. The number 2 thing that patients asked for, other than not wanting a long form, was they wanted something that replicated their everyday use of the internet, especially on their smartphone. They didn't want long blocks of text with a simple request for signature at the end. They wanted something that was a bit more like their everyday use of their smartphone. So we've designed what we call a conversational style interface. So this is a high-risk procedure. Pretty much everything in plastic surgery is considered high risk, and the same for my specialty, neurosurgery. And so we've got 5 components of consent here on the left. I'll go through these in detail in a moment, but we've got the About You section, where we ask them about their personal circumstances and their material risks, really important medico-legally. And then we're going to propose a treatment. Then we have 2 components of mental capacity assessment. We have a cognitive screener and then a retention checker. And then this is where they give their consent. If you do more minor procedures, then there are options where just 2 of these components are there. So this depends on the type of specialty you're in, the actual procedure, or even your own individual appetite for risk as a physician. You can tweak all of these to meet your requirements. But in our library, as a default, we set them to start off with kind of, what we think is a right appropriate level of consent, all the different factors. So before I continue, let me show you three things that are really important as well. So at the bottom right, hopefully you can see this little wheelchair button. So we've got a range of accessibility options. So, you know, if your patient's got visual impairment, they can click a button and they can change, you know, the font size, the line height, they can change and adjust the spacing of the letters, they can change the colors of the contrast to suit their requirements. You know, if they've got epilepsy, they can put a seizure safe profile on. If they've got ADHD, they can focus on certain areas of the screen. We've got a cognitive disability profile. Even blind users, especially for ophthalmology, you know, we've got screen readers in there. So a range of options that they can choose. I'm just going to hit the reset button on that. A range of options that they can choose to suit their requirements so that they can truly engage with the platform far better than your standard digital form and certainly a paper consent form. And then there's a globe button here. If they've got language requirements, they can, where's my computer? I apologize, my computer's playing up today. Updates. Let me just try this again. Sorry. Oh, it's coming up on my other screen. Sorry. There is, you have to take my word for it. I'm very sorry. There's a little button here where you can translate it into other languages, including Spanish. I'll try and shut my PowerPoint down one moment because I think that's what's causing problems. Let me just shut it down on my other screen. Sorry. Let's just try it one more time now that that's gone. I apologize. We'll come back to that one. So then also at the top, we've got an instant message button. So you click on this and then patients can type in a question or raise a concern. Let me give you one such as, you know, I'm taking aspirin. Should I stop for the surgery? Whatever it might be. That kind of thing is quite a common one because in the text there's some prompts about bleeding risk and medication. I'll put that in, but they can ask anything. Don't worry, it's not going to trouble you. It's what we call a non-intrusive messaging system. I'm going to show you. It won't bother you or your staff, but the patients get access to do that. So look, they're going to go through these 5 sections now. So the first one is the only one that's a non-compulsory one. It's the About You section, where they can put in some details about their personal circumstances. And this is really important. It's one of the big things that gets missed in most consents is the material risks of the patient. You're meant to give them information that is, what should we say? Bugs Bunny is a runner, isn't he? He's a rabbit. What does he do? I don't know. Carrot eater. That can be his job. You're meant to give a patient information that they would wish to know, not just what you as a physician think they should know. You need to put yourself into their circumstances and then give them relevant information. That's difficult to do, but it's very difficult also to prove that you've done that. And so this is what we call a little material risk section. So that number one, it helps you to pick up on anything. You know, for example, you know, you are doing a rhinoplasty on someone and it turns out that they're actually a model and you didn't know. You know, that could make a difference if things go wrong or not as well as the patient thinks. And this is an anxiety scale that we have at the end here. This is actually really useful. So in my practice, if anyone hits a 9 or a 10, you know, someone on the staff is going to call them, or we can actually message them on this platform. I'll show you later, just to make sure they're going to turn up. Because we've got some really good data now from small ASCs, that those patients that call in on the morning of surgery who say, oh, I've got a head cold or I'm not feeling well. Actually, the majority of those, 85%, are lying. They're actually just anxious. They're nervous. And if you can pick up on this in advance, we've shown that we can reduce on the morning cancellations of OR time and wasted OR time by 35%. So that on its own is worth doing. And there's one here just relevant to cosmetic surgery about photographs. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, I'll just say no for that one. Okay, so now we're on to the main treatment proposal. So this is an abridged one. It's got 21 sections. I think the original one had about 40. So rather than giving them a big, long document, you know, maybe even pointing them to a website, you know, we package it all up for them into little bite-sized pieces. They can stop and start and come back whenever they want. It starts off with a video explaining what consent is. because actually
This
patients
video
don't even know what
explains
they need to be
have a
thinking about.
procedure or treatment. You should consider the potential
I
benefits
won't play it
and
all,
the potential
but the point
risks.
is there's a video there explaining what consent is and what they need to think about in order to give consent. And importantly, you can prove as a physician or as a facility that you've helped them to understand that, which is a good part of good consent practice. And then it starts off with explaining what the proposed procedure is. And this one's obviously for rhinoplasty. And then an explanation of how it's done. And importantly, an animation. So we've animated about almost 600 of the commonest procedures. So we've got the biggest consent
During this
animation
video,
library in
we'll
the world. I'll
explain
just
what's
kind
involved in
of play a bit of it. Let me
rhinoplasty,
just find a bit
personal
of it for you.
requirements between the two nostrils, as well as inside the
while I'm
nostril.
talking. So we've animated, we've got all the big surgical specialties, plastic surgery. We've got all the big components. I think we've got over 200 animations for orthopedic surgery. We've got general surgery, vascular surgery, neurosurgery, spinal surgery, ear, nose, throat, ophthalmology. We've animated pretty much over 90% of all the commonest procedures done in modern healthcare. And this is one of the probably I think number 2 or number 3 favorite thing with patients. They love having a video animation to help them to understand how the procedure is done. And these videos are all designed by both, in this case, surgeons and also by patients to help them understand how things are done. Let me close that down for now. If we've got time later, happy to show you more videos. And by the way, our full library of videos is the new thing, is now also available if you have your own website. You can actually use our animations on that website. You can license just the animation videos to help you get and bring more patients into your practice and convert more patients into paying customers as well. So we then go through the benefits. I'm going to go quite quickly now just to get you through to something a bit more interesting. And then we go through the risks. And these are abbreviated. We cut out some of them. But the idea being, as you can see here, we explain the risk. And this is where we ask them, send a message if they're taking any medication. But, this text is all customizable. So we'll give you a package, a standard library. But if you as an individual physician or if your facility wants to change any of this, you can. You can do it in advance and build your library and save it for future use as your favorites, or you can do it in real time for each individual patient as well. So I'm just going to click through this quite quickly. I apologize. So we're going through the alternatives now. Have you considered alternatives? You've got to offer them and explain to them what it means if they don't accept that particular treatment, any extra procedures that might become necessary, such as blood transfusion or life-saving surgery in this case. Some further information and what's going to happen after the surgery. Wound care, this is one of the sections that's most commonly adjusted by different physicians. Some may close the skin with sutures, some may close with skin staples. That may make a big difference to the patient. So it's important to kind of put that in. Obviously, I don't think anyone's going to close a rhinoplasty with skin staples, but you never know. Let's go. Then we've got anesthesia here. So we've got a explanation for general anesthesia in this case, and again an animation explaining what general anesthesia is. And actually it turns out that this is actually our number 1 favorite video by the patients. It turns out that for most surgeries, this is the thing that they're actually most afraid of, is the anesthesia, and leaving it till the morning when they meet the anesthesiologist for the first time is one of the biggest reasons why patients get upset later on, and one of the biggest drivers of being sued. Just consenting a patient on the morning of surgery, I should have mentioned earlier, it's a big no-no. You consent someone on the morning of surgery, you may as well throw that piece of paper in the bin or on that form. It is meaningless legally. It's got to be done in advance, ideally at least a week in advance. And I'll explain to you as we go along how you can why that's important as well. And then we've got some additional advisories here, and these are being cut down. There's normally about 10 or 12 of these additional advisories, and you can put these in yourself. You can add information about your own billing and financial responsibilities for your own practice if that's relevant as well. So then we're on to the cognitive screener. Now, every time we take consent as a physician, you've got to do a mental capacity assessment, but we often don't. We look at the patient and we think, they look okay. But actually, especially when we're dealing with the elderly and things go wrong, the first thing that a family member or a lawyer is going to say is, did they have consent? Can you prove that they had the capacity to give consent? And so we do a cognitive screener here, and any issues here, it'll flag up on your platform. And then we have a retention checker where we ask them questions about the information we've given them. These are true, false questions, but actually for some specialties in particular, the questions that we ask are actually more related to expectations management. Because when patients sue, the number one reason they sue is because they've got unrealistic expectations. And so if you can pick up on that, for example, if they think they're guaranteed to look better, they hit yes, it'll flag up on your system. I'll show you where that comes up. And then, you can correct them. You can re-educate them. You can actually message them via the platform, or you can simply just avoid doing surgery on them if you think they're just not someone that, is going to get what you've been telling them. And this final section, they now need to say yes to each of these little questions designed by the lawyers before they can give their consent. So I understand what the treatment's going to involve. I understand the benefits. I understand the risks of the treatment or procedure. I understand the alternatives. I understand any extra procedures. All my questions have been answered to my satisfaction and understanding. To give consent is this one at the top, the one at the bottom if they don't want to, and then they can pop in their signature using their mouse, their finger, depending what device they've got, and they click on this, and then they're done. They're going to get an email receipt so they can go and look at it again and again, watch the videos, share it with their family and friends. And by the way, this platform is, patients tend to go back to it on average about 8 times in the journey. And the videos get watched just under 8 times, 6 of those times in the 48 hours prior to surgery. So this is a service that you just can't offer. Your staff simply can't offer that service. You need a platform like this to allow patients to go back and look at things again and again. So let me go back quickly to finish off and show you what the final part is. So the patient's done their bit. So we can now see at the top of my waiting list here, Bugs Bunny, the consent status has gone green, consented, statement of health professional pending. So I and my team know that Bugs Bunny has given his consent. We just need to review it and countersign. The instant message tracker has gone red. So I know there's an instant message from the patient, which no one in my team has read or dealt with. So I simply click on the patient's name. Normally we'd work from left to right along the bottom here, but I'm just going to click on the messages because I know there's a message, and you can see that at 8:22, Bugs Bunny said, I'm taking aspirin. Should I stop for the surgery? And you can type in here, you can dictate, but actually you can program in your favorite responses because actually it turns out the same few questions come up again and again. And you can program them in. Actually, I haven't got any programmed in here. Please stop 5 days before surgery, or whatever it might be. You can put in your answer there, and I'll just hit submit, and that'll go off to the patient, and they'll get an answer there. So we simply, as a physician or even someone in your team, need to review the information. So we can see here that we've got a caroteter, that's his job, so I'm not too worried about it. There's no information here, no material risks that I need to be concerned about. I'm now going to simply check his mental capacity assessment. He scored 100%, no concerns there. I'm now going to sign it off. All of these statements that the patient had, we have to tick off as well as physicians, but we get to tick them all off in one go. There's a little button here to say that you've got an appropriate knowledge of the proposed procedure. This might be your usual signature, or you can do another one, whatever you want. Pop that in there and it's done. This is now signed. If you're in a larger facility, this will fly straight off into your electronic medical record system, into your Epic or your Cerner system. Or if you're in a smaller facility, you can hit this download button here and save it to whatever system you have for storing things, whether it's a small electronic medical record system or whether you're even on paper, you can still do this and print it out. So let me just show you what you get to defend yourself as a physician and your facility as well. So this is a PDF document. It's 24 pages long, and actually the real one is actually nearer 30, 35. Hence digital is the way to go. So it'll have a front page, Bloomsbury Health Centre. This is our kind of made up centre here with a bit of branding for your facility. We have a simple contents page which summarizes all the different components of consent, the different risks and benefits, etc. And then we have a demographics page for the patient, about you and your team, a unique QR code so that if they are on paper, they can just point their device at it and bring up the digital version now, or even in a few years' time if someone is trying to sue you. And then this is really important, the consent journey. This is where you can prove you've done all the different components of consent. The number one reason why consent fails in the US across all the different states is because a patient or their lawyer says they didn't have enough time to consider the information. They felt pressurized on the morning of surgery often, or within a day or two of having the surgery. Hence, you cannot do this on the morning of surgery. And this is a way of proving that you've done everything in the appropriate manner with an appropriate time scale. And then we go through every single bit of information we've given them is now written in full, no abbreviations. And actually, if you have a look at my cursor, all the media that we upload here, that includes if you upload your own media, by the way, live links. So one of the top 5 kind of loopholes that lawyers use is that they'll say, my client told us that you gave them a leaflet, a pamphlet, you maybe gave them a website URL to look at. Can you show me, can you prove to me which URL you gave them? And can you prove which version and that URL hasn't been updated, etc. You just can't do that. It's a really easy loophole, forces you to settle. With this, we keep the live links here. We keep it past 5 years, up to 15 years for pediatrics, past the statute of limitations in every state, so that a lawyer can simply click on this and watch the video themselves. And actually, it's one of the commonest reasons why they don't even try to sue you when they see a consent portfolio like this. And you could see for every statement, the patient has accepted and understood it, and it's date and time stamped. It's not simply a signature at the end of a document or initialing at the bottom of every page. Every single risk, they have date and time stamped when they accepted it, or if they didn't, and when they went back and redid it. That way, they cannot deny there was a small risk I didn't know about, etc. Let me just scroll to the bottom just to show you something a bit more interesting. I'm just going to scroll quickly through all these other sections. So we've got the anesthesia consent, and you can put in extra things in here for registry consent, research. If you do it, you can bundle it all into here really easily. So that it's one 30-second process for you. The patient gets a nice package of information. And here you go. Here's a patient's consent. They've ticked off all the components. This is their electronic signature. This is their digital signature. This is you or a member of your team. Here's your electronic signature. Here's your digital signature. And at the bottom, we have an instant messaging section, which records all the messaging that's gone on between the patient and your team. Everything date and time stamped. The number 2 reason why consent fails across the country is not only because a patient or their lawyer says they didn't have enough time, but they didn't have enough opportunity to raise any questions or concerns. So, I called their office, but the doctor was busy. They didn't have time to call me until, 3 days later, or whatever it might be. This way, a patient has 24/7 access to raise their concerns and ask their questions. But as you can see, it's a non-intrusive system. It's just there waiting for you or a member of staff to simply, answer it or acknowledge it. And then it's all date and time stamped and logged into the consent form. So that's what you get to defend yourself. There's a few more kind of things on here. We have things here for face-to-face consents for those that can't use technology or don't have devices. There's some really cool technology about how you personalize consents and customize it. We've got readability wizards in there. 15% of the US population have a reading age of less than grade 7. And actually, if you try to edit any of the text, we have our wizard, which will pick up on any language if you jump into medical jargon and guide you to actually put it into really easy readable text. There's a few more cool things in there and how you can add it, some list functionality for your different surgical lists. But look, I don't want to run out of time. I want to give you guys some time to ask some questions. Let me show you one thing I think you are going to ask. Let me see if I can get my PowerPoint up again, which does seem to be playing up. Just to show you one thing which I know you're going to ask, or I hope you're going to ask, because it shows that you might be mildly interested in this, which is pricing. So very quickly, what does it cost? It's an annual license fee, $2,500 per year per physician. It's volume based, so if you're a center with more than one physician, the more you buy, the cheaper it gets. And if for the very large facilities, it actually gets down to less than $1 per patient per consent. So it can get very cheap if you're in a large facility as well. and you get a free 1 month trial before committing. And if you mention when you sign up the Prudent Plastic Surgeon, you'll get a further 20% discount. So that's the pricing question. I'm sure you've got others. So let me be quiet. And I'm just going to actually just put please go ahead and ask some questions. And I'm just going to put a thing up on the screen so that you know how to contact us as well on that email address.
Awesome.
Sorry
Thanks,
for talking
Suresh.
so fast and for so long.
No, that's great. I think it's such a cool thing on multiple aspects. I think the utility of it speaks for itself. I mean, we have patients come back a week before and go through a consent process in the office, which takes up a PA. And oftentimes it's the same day, I'm in clinic and I'm seeing new patients, and I often get pulled in because they have this question or that question. And so it kind of becomes a big time commitment. It's obviously an important thing, and it's really nice that this product kind of makes it even more comprehensive and understandable, but minimizes the time of the physician. But I think the cool thing is, like, all the time, I mean, on like a daily basis, in any sort of like doctor's lounge or surgeon's lounge, you hear doctors saying like, oh, well, we just need to come up with this idea or that idea or something like that, or we're going to fix this in this way. But you actually did it. What were some of the biggest hurdles you kind of faced coming up for going from idea to this product, which is complete and really awesome?
I think the hardest thing is just deciding to do it.
Yeah.
We're lucky we live in a world now where it's actually not as hard as it was, a long time, 20 years ago, say, to actually produce something. It has to be a commercial solution. So, for example, when we started this off, it wasn't even meant to be commercial. It was just, when I was a resident, with our first product, just wanted to solve a problem. I had a few patients that had come to harm. In fact, when I met my business partner, Alex, it was over a patient that actually died because of a communication error. And, and as you say, lots of my colleagues have been talking about this for years. Yeah, we should do this. This should happen. Why isn't there this thing? And I thought, and part of it is also naivety. I thought, actually, it can't be that hard to do this. So I thought, right, I've got 2 weeks to do this. I found 2 weeks. I happened to find, someone that knew some technology, and thought, I'll solve this in 2 weeks. Let's get into it. And then, it got harder and harder and harder. And then you're kind of committed, and then you kind of get into it. So naivety, in my personal experience, it kind of helped, kind of by not kind of appreciating how much effort it was going to be. But actually, once you get stuck in, I really enjoyed it. And I mean, the biggest hurdle really is just that commitment. Once you do it, I knew nothing about technology. I knew nothing about business. But once you get stuck in and you're willing to learn, willing to put in those hard yards and hard, training, you've got to train yourself and you've got to learn. And then you can get there. And then, very importantly, hire the right people and get involved or meet the right people to help you do this. That's you need some luck as well.
Yeah, well, that's such a great example and message. And basically, again, looking at this now, you go, oh my God, he must have been into tech or into business or had some sort of, head start in this. But no, you just had an idea, and you, like you said, you just kept taking the next step to see it to reality, which now it's at. And I think that's, so cool. Certainly, if anyone has questions, feel free to just chime in or put it in the chat. What, Suresh, have you seen as being the biggest barrier, now that it's a complete product, to implementation? Obviously, I know you've had a lot of success in implementing this and your products, both in the UK and US, but what's kind of been the biggest barrier in that regard?
I think there are different barriers depending on the size of the health facility. So the big ones, it's just bureaucracy. So the big, kind of the big health systems and big hospitals, there's a belief that nothing can change. It's not up to me as a physician to change things. It's someone else's, job to do it, which is true. But if you pass us on to the right people, nearly everyone, when you get there, when we get to your legal department, when we get to someone seeing you up, they look at this and they're like, oh my God, why didn't we know about this sooner? So that barrier of thinking that you can't be part of that change process, that's one part of it. In the smaller facilities, the small ASCs, and especially the ones where, you know, the physician-owned ones, it's actually a lot easier. I guess the main thing is people underestimating the how big a problem malpractice can be if they don't do this right. They think it's an insurmountable problem. They just think, oh, malpractice is always going to be there. It's just the cost of doing business. But actually, you can actually, number one, stop yourself getting sued. Number two, you can cut your insurance premiums after a few years if you use a product like this. And we've done that where this has been in use for a while. So you can save serious money. But it's underestimating what one kind of bad malpractice suit will do for your future finances. Because just one suit in your center, especially for you as a physician, if you're in private practice, the increased costs of your insurance over the next few years, this is coming back to the prudent plastic surgeon mentality, that will you take that's relatively small amount of money and it compounds over the rest of your career, and it only takes you to get sued once. People just underestimate. They think, oh, I'll be all right, you know, or I'll get around to this next year, or I'll get around to whenever. Just takes one, and it will really affect your finances for the rest of your life.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you so much for your time, Suresh, and sharing this. Oh, we got one come in. Do you think this product would reduce insurance premiums? You just alluded to that. Have your products been registered with carriers? We do yearly tutorials to reduce premiums.
So yes, we haven't actually. So in other countries, we've been around a bit longer, and so the indemnifiers insurance providers will reduce your premiums. There's a couple of the malpractice insurers here that are starting to think about it. So basically, if you ask them and you say, I'm using this, they may just give you a discount on your premium straight away. Some of them will want you to be using this probably for a couple of years, and then they're likely to do it. And we haven't registered with all of the carriers. We're just talking with a couple of them at the moment.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Suresh, again for sharing your time, and everyone for coming on. Congratulations on everything you've done, and super excited to keep learning from you and seeing what's next.
Great. No, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. It's been a real pleasure. Have a great evening.
All right. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye.